Mickey's talking. I definitely can't hear him.
I turned the mic back off.
You are talking to a crowded room, though, Lindsay, so FYI.
Okay. Great.
It should. It's
Good evening and welcome to the February 11th, 2019 meeting of the Shawnee City Council. I would ask that you please silence your electronic devices at this time. I am Mayor Michelle Dissler. I'll be chairing this meeting. I'll do a roll call at this time. Councilmember Zimmerman?
Present.
Councilmember Neighbor?
Present.
Councilmember Jenkins?
Present.
Councilmember Kimling?
Present.
Councilmember Meyer?
Present.
Councilmember Larson Bonnell?
Present.
Councilmember Sandifer?
Present.
And Councilmember Constance is participating remotely by phone. Are you there?
Present.
Thank you. If the Scouts would like to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence, please. Come on up. Whenever you're ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. But now, you want to introduce yourselves to everyone and tell them what troop you're with? Direction. Thank you so much. Next, I'll explain our procedures for public input. During the meeting, I'll offer the opportunity for public input. If you'd like to speak to the council at any of those times, please come forward to the microphone. I'll ask you to state your name and address for the record, and you may offer your comments. So that members of the audience can hear your comments, I would ask that you speak directly into the microphone. By policy, comments are limited to 5 minutes. No person may speak more than twice to any one agenda item. After you're finished, please sign the form on the podium to ensure we have an accurate record of your name and address. In addition, while we won't do a roll call vote on every vote, I will state council members' names who vote in minority so that our listening audience will have a clear and accurate record of the vote. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone have an item they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll accept it.
Madam Mayor,
sorry.
I just would like to
Councilmember
point
Whitmer.
out that items 6 and 7 on the agenda point to decreases in contract amounts amounting to like $230,000 savings to the city.
Very good. Thank you. Seeing none, I'll accept a
Move for
motion.
approval.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. How do we know how Lindsay voted?
Aye.
Okay,
Time delay.
thank you. The next item on the agenda is mayor's items. I have 2 items tonight. First, I would like to welcome Bob Hamilton, who will be presenting the AAA Silver Award to the Police Department Traffic Safety Unit.
Is this the HVAC guy?
Madam Mayor, City Council, as you said, my name is Bob Hamilton, and I'll get it out of the way right now. I have nothing to do with that plumbing company. I myself am a retired law enforcement officer of 33 years here in Johnson County. So I know what these men and women of your law enforcement go through. If you remember I believe it was last week, Houston had 4 officers shot. Luckily, they all 4, last I heard, are going to survive. So when people think all these officers do is sit around the corner and wait for someone to pull them over and write them a ticket, it's not quite like that. When everybody else is running away from problems, law enforcement, along with fire and everybody else, is running towards it. One thing you need to be proud of, this is the 7th year that I'm here. They are receiving the Gold Award this year. They've received the Gold Award all 7 years. And there's 4 law enforcement liaisons, which I'm one of, in Northeast Kansas. There's 4 of us across the state. And the 4 of us contact our law enforcement agencies and work with AAA Insurance to pick out some of the top law enforcement agencies that we have across the state of Kansas. And this year, once again, I'm here to present your police department with the award. Your agency is one of very few that have received this award every year that we have presented it. So that speaks a lot about your law enforcement agency. Some of the things that they have done to receive this award: they have a community-based traffic safety committee that meets regularly and identifies traffic safety problems and formulates solutions. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Operation Impact. Having the departmental policy requiring the use of seatbelts. In education, we recognized them this year for having the teen driving alcohol, texting while driving, seatbelt use, and child seat installation. For their enforcement work, they're recognized for their data-driven approach to crime and traffic safety, their impaired driving deterrence program, seatbelt usage enforcement, Thanksgiving, safe arrival, and aggressive driving enforcement, and DUI check lanes. They were also recognized for their close coordination with the traffic engineering department to take care of any problems that you had out on Shawnee Mission Parkway during your rush hours. Like I said, the police department is receiving their 7th consecutive gold award. We're going to have to get together, Steve. We've got to get you up one more to platinum. That's our top award for demonstrating superior efforts in addressing local traffic safety issues. So, Madam Mayor, Council, at this time, I'd like to present Chief Mosier and the Traffic Unit and Shawnee Police Department the Gold Award for Traffic Safety.
Okay, the next item is the Peace Pledge and Good Neighbor Award. So if I could have Lucy's Kids for Peace recite their peace pledge for us. Would you like to come up front here? Or do you want to just say, okay.
Lucy's Kids for Peace. Our chapter started in honor of our neighbor Lucy, who died of brain cancer when she was just 17 months old. We started our chapter in 2012, and we now have 100 members. Each month, our group does a project or activity. We do things to spread kindness, help those in need, both people and animals, care for our earth, learn about people from other cultures, and appreciate art. We are learning how to recognize needs around us and then help in meeting those needs. Through our projects, we are helping to create a more healthy and happy planet. We believe that kids can make a difference by doing simple acts of kindness. We believe that every person deserves to feel joy, kindness, love, and friendship. We believe in peace. Thank you for serving our community, and thank you for allowing us to come tell you about Lucy's Kids for Peace. We'd now like to share a peace pledge with you. As you listen to these words, we challenge all of you to think about how awesome it would be if everyone followed the peace pledge. Ready, friends? Let's do it. I pledge to use my words to speak in a kind way. I pledge to help others as I go throughout my day. I pledge to care for our earth with my healing heart and hand. I pledge to respect people in each and every way. I pledge to join together as we unite the big and small. I pledge to do my part to create peace for one and all.
Okay, now I would like to present the Good Neighbor Award. If Michael and Jill Chaffee would please join me up front. So when the Shawnee Dispatch ceased operations, I was struggling to find a way to get good news that's happening in Shawnee. That would be one of my sources where I would go to and I would see accomplishments and things like that. And so I wanted to recognize the good news. So with that, we started good news starts here to where people can submit nominations for neighbors that have done amazing things. So I want to read the story about you guys. So it says, my neighbors, Michael and Jill Chaffee, are the epitome of good neighbors. They have shoveled multiple driveways and raked multiple yards, not their own, but that's the least of it. They lead a group called Lucy's Kids for Peace that helps teach children kindness. They have organized block parties and served on the homeowners board. Their children often show up with yummy baked goods to share. They are selfless and generous people, and we count ourselves lucky to have them for neighbors. So I just wanted to thank you both so much for being such great neighbors in Shawnee and setting an example, and hopefully more people will learn from your example. So thank you so much. And I wanted to Neighbor Award. Thank you so much.
Oh, they're fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you. Gosh, thank you guys. Did you ask them to take one of these to Ray?
Not this one.
I'm actually going to put
Thank
that one
you.
on. Hi. Lindsay's daughter.
Aw.
We'll share.
Okay. My heart tells me to inspire others, so we will try to do that.
Are you incredible?
Oh, you're incredible. Okay. The next item is business from the floor. Is there anyone who has comments on an issue that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none. The next item on the agenda is public items. Item number 1 is to consider passing ordinance number 3251, authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds, adopting resolution number 1858, calling for a special question election in the manner prescribed by the Mail Ballot Election Act, and the other items related to the proposed community center. Discussions regarding a new community center have been ongoing for over 15 years. On August 7th, 2018, the council committee directed staff to prepare information for residents about funding a proposed community center at Woodland Drive and 61st Street. On October 22nd, 2018, and November 12th, 2018, the governing body authorized the city manager to negotiate a contract with Perkins & Will for architectural services for Phase 1 conceptual design of the proposed community center, awarded the contract for owner's representative services to project advocates, and approved a contract with J.E. Dunn Construction for Phase 1 pre-construction services. The project team, including consultants and city staff, will present information including facility amenities, costs related to construction, staffing, operations, and a mail ballot election. There are 4 recommended actions. The first recommended action is to consider approving a not-to-exceed amount of $38 million for the cost of the proposed community center. Second is to consider approving a mail ballot election. Third is to consider passing ordinance number 3251, authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds for initial operating cost. And the final recommended action is to consider adopting resolution number 1858, calling for a special mail ballot election. Before we begin this presentation, I would like to explain the proceedings for this item. The project team will make a presentation. I would ask that all questions be held until the end. After the presentation, I'll ask if the council has any discussion or questions. After council discussion, I will ask for public comments. Members of the public who wish to speak to this item should raise their hand and wait to be recognized. Once you've been recognized, you may approach the podium to the right, to your right, my left, and state your name and address for the record. As a reminder, members of the public may only speak for 5 minutes, and they cannot speak more than twice to any one item. Time can be extended with a motion, a second, and a majority vote. After you've completed your comments, please sign the form on the podium. On January 29th, the city clerk received one citizen information group application from Eric Danielson. Per policy statement number 7, Mr. Danielson will have 30 minutes. Extensions to that time may be provided with a motion, a second, and a majority vote. The 10 members who signed the application will not be able to speak as they have ceded their individual time to Mr. Danielson. We will now begin the project team's presentation. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you. Neil Holman, Parks and Recreation Director. I got live in the moment, so I will live in the moment. How perfect is that? First of all, I want to thank you all for allowing us to be at this stage in the process. So it's been a long time, and really appreciate you allowing us to go through the process to get to this point. And Mayor, thank you. The team is here. They'll come up in their section and then present for allowing questions at the end. So the team's here. Jot down anything, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions at all. So I will start the background. So it has been a while. 2003, the park needs assessment, asking the question of do we need a facility out west of 435? Over 60% did say yes. In 2005, we looked at 11 pieces of property. And we narrowed it down to 61st and Woodland. At that time, we did purchase that piece of property at 61st and Woodland. 2006, we had the community center study with RDG out of Omaha. They conducted a planning charrette, but the project was tabled due to economic recession. So at that time, we kind of backed off. 2008, again, with the needs assessment, a good support for a rec center. 2013, Parks and Recreation Needs Center. We do one every 5 years, if you're seeing the trend. We had, again, more good support for developing an indoor rec center. 2015, we had the citizen survey. And at that time, we actually pinpointed where it was, and 61st and Woodland. That's where we actually said, this is where it's going to go. What do you think? And again, there was support. 2017, citizen survey, again supported the center at 61st and Woodland. And then 2018, again, thank you for allowing us the opportunity of the community center master plan feasibility study, and then also with the survey being out there. So, which was awesome. So now we're going to get to start the presentation with the master plan findings.
Good evening, Tanya Leck, your Deputy Parks and Recreation Director. I'm just going to go through quickly some of the findings that we came from the master plan. You have all seen this information back in August, but I wanted to just kind of reiterate where we came from, the basis for the information as we move forward. So the survey the master plan survey that was part of that went out to 3,000 homes in Shawnee residents. It was in all 4 wards. We had a really good equal representation from the various wards replying to this. It was a completely random survey. The goal for statistically significant results was we hope to have 400 results or 400 surveys returned to us, and we actually had 543. So we had a really good support representation from the residents of Shawnee. We also continued on and did an online survey, the same questions that was a random survey. So those folks who didn't have the opportunity to participate in that still had a chance to weigh in on their opinions on those things. So those were kept separate, but again, 95% information on there for that the information is valid. So real pleased with that. From that, we saw that the usage of Shawnee Parks and Recreation facilities and parks is very high. We've known that over all of those different needs assessments that Neil just mentioned. There's always been a continued support for parks and recreation, open space, trails, a lot of interest in that. Over half, 54% of the people surveyed that indicated that their families, their households have participated in at least one program over the past 12 months. That's significantly higher than the national average. So we were really pleased to see, again, that the folks are interested in what is going on in the programs and parks that we offer. So when we talked about that, we asked about their needs, their priorities. And when we came up with the priorities, indoor facilities, indoor programs, and aquatic facilities. So were the three different areas that we looked at. For indoor facilities, indoor aquatics facilities is a need that is out there in our community that's not being met, and it was the number one amenity that people were looking for. Elevated running, walking, and jogging tracks, and then the fitness equipment areas. All three of those things ranked high, and they have consistently ranked high. If you look back over our needs assessment, these things have been a strong need in our community. We talked about the highest priorities for indoor programs, again, indoor programs, and those top three that came to the top was farmers market, fitness and wellness programs, and indoor court sports. I will start right now with the farmers market is not necessarily an indoor program, but that was part of our survey questions, and we'll touch on that in just a second. And then the highest priorities for aquatic amenities within an indoor facility. Recreational swimming was number one, a lazy river, and then multi-lane lap pools. So looking at just specifically the facilities that they're needing, this is the survey question that was shown, and each of those red check marks represent those things that our residents have indicated that they'd like to see in a community center and that we were able to put into the design for this. There's been a lot of information. This came from we heard this during our public meetings, our open houses, the Build-A-Center, and then also the survey. So we were hearing these consistently as we went through. Then the indoor recreation programs, again, I mentioned farmers market is at the top there, but then fitness, wellness programs, indoor court sports, cooking class, special events, all of those things. And as we get through to see the presentation, you'll notice that right now that farmers market is not part of the program offerings that we're looking at for this facility. It is such a big component of farmers markets across the area. We really feel like there needs to be more study to it, that it's something that we look at for the right location for it, for all of the residents. So that is not currently in there, but you can see lots of red check marks. So we were very pleased with the results that we were able to look at and to put into this into the community center. And then finally, the aquatic features, recreational swimming, lazy river, and the multi-lane lap pool. So you can see the strong support of each of those items. At the time we did the survey, we had been working extensively with the USD 232, the DeSoto School District, and for a competitive pool, multi-lane competitive water. We worked for over a year looking at those studies and trying to come up with something that would benefit both the school district and the city. And at the time we went to final design, the school district did vote not to participate to build their own aquatics components. So instead of the 6 to 10 lanes that we had asked the residents, we did end up with 4 lanes. So it gives us plenty of space for the recreational lap lane swimmer, which is a very high need that we have seen, a lot of requests for that. And it's an exclusive space so that it's not multi-use during those lap lane times. So I think people will really enjoy that. So you can see a lot of support that we were able to put into the space, and hopefully we have met the needs that the majority of the residents are looking for in a community center. All right, and I'm going to have Brad going to come up and talk about the project.
Thanks, Tanya. Good evening. I'm Brad Way with Project Advocates, a principal with Project Advocates. We're your owner's representative for the community center project. So I just want to kind of touch on the process that we've been through over the past 4 months or so and the team that's been put together from that side. So our real goal as the project has been put together and the team put together was to define the scope of the project, What are all the components, all the things that Neil and Tanya have gone through? What's that scope going to be? What's the schedule for the project is going to take from this day forward, moving on, and how that's all going to come together? And then probably most importantly, the cost. What is the cost of the project going to be, and really putting a lot of detail to that. So as the agenda really stated, it all started in October from this side with the conceptual designer being brought on board, with Project Advocates as the owner's representative being brought on board in a competitive process. And then one of our first tasks was to go through a competitive process for the construction manager. And it's really construction manager as constructor. You'll see the CMC kind of acronym that goes along with that. And that was awarded to J.E. Dunn through that process that we went through on that selection. So that's really the team that was starting to put together. And I have to say the city really did an exceptional job of putting a team together. The heart that I got said, hard work beats talent. And I think we have both. So that seemed to fit really well. So this project team was put together with, started out the conceptual designer, Perkins and Will. Chris Kostelic is here, and he'll be presenting the designs. Really an 84-year-old practice that specializes in community centers and projects like this in the conceptual side. And then really partnering with Perkins and Will is the Clark Anderson Partners, local, almost 75-year-old company here in the Kansas City area. They will be the architects of record and really doing the workhorse side of the drawings and the specifications, as well as the structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, landscape design, all will be coming through Rick Wise and the Clark Anderson Partner side. Some consultants that are on the team, Water Technologies for the aquatics side of things, McClure Engineering on civil engineering. And then, as I mentioned, we have Scott Sherry here with J.E. Dunn. I think you're all familiar with them, and obviously the top contractor in the Kansas City area for many, many, many years. And so that's been a real pleasure to be able to work with them. Ourselves as the owner's representative and what I call the trusted advisor to yourselves and to the project team to be able to herd everybody together, head in the right direction. And my associate, Sam McCord, a Shawnee resident, is here with us tonight. And then Ballard King, Darren Barr is here with us, and really the operational consultant for the team and putting the operations side together. So along with that, and obviously the city staff and all the various departments that have been involved in the process going through. So a real exceptional team has been put together, just really 4 short months that this group has been working to really culminate in this evening and where we stand with the project. But it's really come together through a lot of collaboration, a lot of efficiency, a lot of communication that's taken place. So I think with that, I'm going to see if Chris can, one more piece. So in the process side, the first thing that we did was looked at the project charter and put together a project charter that took all of these surveys, all of the information that was out there, and said, what are our goals? What are our objectives for this project? What does this team want to accomplish? How do we get a framework for the schedule, the budget, everything to come together? So I think that project charter is part of your packet that this team worked on. Then going through the conceptual design, can we get enough information so we can put really accurate costs to the project? So with that conceptual design, we've worked with J.E. Dunn, and Scott will go through that in some more detail to look at what's that construction cost, because that's a majority part. We led the effort for the soft cost budget, and the hard construction cost side of things are what of all the furniture, the equipment, the professional services, permits and fees, everything else that's going to go into the project from what we call the soft cost side. And then just not even a month ago, held the 2 public meetings that took place on the 15th and 16th to get more community input. So here's where we stand today. Here's the direction that the team is going, and could we get some more input towards refining where we stood then and continuing to move forward. So that was really the process side, and from that, really Chris Kostelic, Perkins and Will and their team have been putting this whole concept together on what the project's going to look like. like I said, enough definition to it so that we could put a solid price tag to it. Chris, with that?
Well, good evening. I'm Chris Kostelik with Perkins & Will Architects. I'm one of the principal designers for the firm. And I have to say, gosh, over the last year and a half, we've really begun to understand this project a little bit better. But most importantly, I think we've really understood Shawnee as a community and what the values are and all the things that kind of come into being a great place to live and a great place to recreate. And so it was really fun to walk through this process and start to understand what a great community center would be for the residents and families and people that live here. I think one of the things that really came out of this was that it needed to be a multi-generational center. It needed to sort of address that 1 to 100 age group. And how do you do that, really? How do you understand what this broad range of needs is? And then how do you sort of deliver that in functional, sort of thoughtful planning? And the idea is that this building is a place to come together. It's not a building about sort of assigning activity. It's about sort of bringing all this into one place, and that's sort of the glue that holds a building together. And I think it's the glue that sort of holds a community together. And so I think that was a real nice thing to frame this project on, this hub of activity, diverse activity. It's not just for sports. It's for socialization. It's for health, wellness, enrichment, all those things that you do as a community, as a great community. And so I think that was exciting. We also met a lot of the needs that Tanya outlined with warm water aquatics, lap swimming, all the other pieces and parts that kind of come into this. I think another thing really related to that location, you've owned that site for several years, this beautiful sort of pastoral site. I think it was a huge goal of the project to make sure that the building and the site were integrated, right? Sort of this indoor-outdoor experience. And so you'll see the concepts we came up with, and hopefully we've achieved that. And if we haven't, I'm hoping we hear it. So I do think those are really important pieces, and then making sure it all kind of comes together as a place that we can all enjoy. I'm going to go through numbers very fast because there's lots of people with lots of numbers today, but if there are any questions, obviously we're happy to go through some a little more detail. But in general, the building is broken into sort of these major activity areas, the largest of which, or at least the most costly of which, is the aquatics area. There's about 4,000 square feet of water surface area within 4 bodies of water. You'll see those in the plans, and those include the recreational swimming, lap swimming, hot tub, and the spray ground, and then quite a bit of deck space, all the supporting mechanical storage, office space, all the things that make for a great aquatic environment. A fairly large fitness facility, 5,700 square feet roughly of open indoor fitness and workout space, as well as 2 group exercise studios, sort of sharing some storage. The other thing that I think is important in there is also this idea that you've got good locker room support and all the other things that sort of make for a good quality and thoughtful state-of-the-art fitness and recreation facility. 2 of the larger spaces in the building, this great gymnasium space, a multi-activity court gymnasium space. So this is sort of where everything happens. This is sort of the workhorse of your building. And then connected to that is this turf field house. So everything you can't do on the court, you have the ability to take those outdoor activities and practice them indoor when we have weather like tonight. And so I think those are things that we really wanted to understand and make sure that we thought long and hard about. And then plenty of good storage to support those activities. There's a lot of community space in the building, rental space, classroom enrichment spaces, an indoor playground, child watch area, child sitting area, excuse me, a lactation room. I think that was an important one as well. And then all of the requisite areas that sort of support that: lounge, seating, lobby spaces. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. Let's get that out of the way. You know, my little tag said nothing is impossible, but technology for me tonight may be the one that breaks my back. We'll see if the VR comes up. So again, to round out the program, locker rooms, change spaces, family change spaces, plenty of space to really kind of use this facility properly. And then we can't forget the administration, all the great parks and recreation staff that run all the great programs in the city have good space to do that as well. I won't get into all the support and service spaces, but we need all those things to run a good building. About 64,000 square feet of active recreation and useful space for a total project of about 67,700 square feet. So we started thinking about now how this 67,000 square feet of space would live and breathe and kind of work on that site and within the community. And we came up with this idea of the confluence, the idea that you move through this piece of land, you experience this building, you sort of go through the eddies through the building, and then you spill out into this park. It was a pretty simple concept, but we thought it was a pretty thoughtful way to organize both a site and organize a building. And so we really tried to react to that and come up with ways. These are some sketches that we did that sort of, I know they look like a child did them, but they are the impetus of an idea, I promise.
Did we pay for this?
When do you see the EVR? It all starts somewhere. Touche, though. That's a very good comment. But it did sort of evolve into this idea that you have this building that sort of nestles its way into the park that you sort of move through, in, and out of. And so we did some more refined sketches to sort of communicate that. And this was sort of the option that I think the general group gravitated toward, was this idea of a confluence. So I'll talk through the design, and then we'll circle back around and hopefully show some fun technology of what those amazing sketches led to in a final building, or a proposed building design. So within the site, the building sort of sits oriented kind of toward the middle of the site, sort of overlooking this pond space. There's parking off to the west coming in from Woodland Drive. There's a bike trail, or a walking trail, sort of a fitness loop that goes around the complex, which I think is a real nice feature. Plenty of deck and plaza space, outdoor event space. And I think the other things that are really nice are their park amenities, like the picnic shelter and the restroom space that would support all those activities that are happening out on the site, particularly the cyclocross, which I think is a great amenity. I think it's kind of fun to have something different like that. We've got one of the best cyclocross complexes in the country in Boulder, Colorado, and I think this one might just rival it, so I'm pretty excited about seeing that. And then, of course, all of it connecting to sort of the Clear Creek Trail, and all of it's sort of done in a naturalized character, and you'll see that in the renditions, that it really does sort of capture the quality of that site. So we prepared these renditions of the building to give you a sense of the quality, the character, but they are conceptual. I want to stress that nothing's final, and of course, until the community decides this is something we want to move forward with, but more importantly, until the design is finalized and funded. And so I think these are just character studies. So materials, colors, qualities, all those things can certainly change. But we wanted to give you a flavor of what we thought this confluence would look like. So this would be a view of the front entry from the parking and the drop-off. This idea that sort of nature moves into the building. Warm materials, wood, stone, glass, natural materials. This is a view from the sort of the south of the project, kind of looking across the pond. That would be a big picture of the lounge space and the pool that you can see through that large glass area. A couple of cyclocross riders rolling their bikes up to the park and sit on the patio. This is a picture at dusk from sort of the east side of the east side of the property. Again, you can kind of see into the running track, the fitness center off to the right, and the pool space off to the left. This would be a view of the interior of the fitness space, sort of looking down below at the lounge. It sort of overlooks the gymnasium, waiting for friends or family to play, and I think a nice viewing area, and then this upper level fitness space that looks out across the park to the east. And there's a view of the indoor leisure pool. You can see the lazy river and swim area in the foreground. In the background, you can see the dump bucket, and the lap lanes. Behind the dump bucket is the hot tub, and then off to the left of that view is the spray ground. And I think it's fun to point out the feature that was included, this idea of a water climbing wall and maybe even dive platforms. So bringing a little bit more energy and things for the older kids that would enjoy. And then there's a picture of the potential indoor playground. And again, something that's really naturalized in character and sort of has a quality of something similar to the rest of the site and the rest of the location. And then finally, this lounge space that looks out onto the park. Nice fireplace, place to gather, place to come spend time with your neighbors. And then the turf gymnasium, play those indoor sports or outdoor sports indoors. So I'll walk through the plan and kind of give you an orientation of the building or the proposed building. The front entry, right here, are you able to see my cursor? The front check-in desk with sort of views into the gymnasium. If you take a right as you walk in past the entry desk, you'd come into sort of the community wing of the building. These are uses that I think would be available for people all the time. These aren't necessarily pay-to-play type of uses. These are things that people would be able to take advantage of in some of the programs and activities that would be offered. Staff with a good visibility of the facility, a pair of group exercise studios, sharing storage. There's that indoor playground. There's plenty of lounge seating through this. You'll see this in the interior renditions that we show you in a second. Child watch area, and then those multi-use classrooms, and then the lounge sort of overlooking the deck in the park. As you come through and past the reception control desk, then you would be sort of in the more sport zone of the building. That would be the pair of gymnasium courts and the multi-activity gym, the turf gym. There's that lounge that I talked about. There's the lactation room right there. And then those are the locker rooms and family change rooms that then lead into the leisure pool, lap pool, hot tub, and splash pad. And you can see the lazy river and sort of this open swim area. There's a pair of pool party rooms that would be great to support. Well, I shouldn't call them pool party rooms. They're party rooms. And they would both support pool parties as well as playground parties as well as gymnasium or even sport parties. So you could do a lot of different things with those active rooms. Upstairs, you'd have then at the top of the stair here is the walking jogging track that overlooks the gym and the turf. And then that large fitness center, a pair of restrooms, and some change space. And that sort of rounds out the program. And I didn't want to forget the most important thing on this level is that outdoor fitness deck that overlooks the park and would be a great place to go work out outside on nice days. So did I miss how I get to the... Oh, it's after these two. Okay, I'm sorry. Wanted to make sure I had those on place. So one of the things that we're really passionate about as designers, and frankly, I think it's kind of one of our singular most important issues in our world, and is this agreement that we make with our environment, right? It provides for us, and in turn, we take care of it. And as we build buildings and bring resources and assets online as a community, it's our job to make sure that those community assets are sustainable and thoughtful and respectful of our environmental resources. So we think it's really important that this project look to those sort of sustainable goals if it is indeed funded and is indeed built. Sustainable sites, this is maximizing open space, limiting our disturbance to the land, considering how we deal with water and drainage and conservation issues, making sure that we don't pollute the environment with light and other things. And so these are things that we want to consider as we look at the site. Water efficiency, again, a huge issue. Making sure that we don't use more water than we need to irrigate sites, making sure that we use fixtures in the building that are water conserving, and make sure that our pool and other areas in the building conserve that water as well. And there's a lot of great ideas that we can incorporate. Recycling materials is always an important one, but also using materials initially that have a high recycled content, and making sure that we're conscious of our natural resources. Energy and atmosphere, I won't bore you with every single one of these, but it should be a very highly efficient building. And that shouldn't be too tough to achieve, a very high efficient mechanical building with sort of thoughtful design of HVAC systems, high efficiency lighting, making sure that our building sort of uses heat and cooling in a smart and sort of economical way. These are big buildings. They oftentimes change their use patterns pretty sporadically throughout the course of a day, and so mechanical and electrical systems that react to that are very important. And then finally, we're here to be healthy, right? So it should have an indoor environmental quality. Good ventilation, plenty of daylight, good views, all the things that make a sustainable project sustainable. So we prepared some information. Whoops. That's what I'm doing. Anything is possible. For my heart. Oh, there it is. There it is. It just took a second. Sorry. Anything is possible if you wait a few seconds. Patient. So we put together a little bit of a virtual reality look through this building. And again, I want to stress that these are very conceptual. Certainly no final decisions made, but this should give you a flavor of what the inside of this building might look like. These would be available at some point to look through virtual reality VR goggles as well, but for the purposes of this meeting, I think it's easier just to walk through. This would be a view as if you were just to have walked in the building from the drop-off. Coming to the front desk, you look beyond the front desk to the gymnasium. You'd see that signage that sort of leads you down the hallway to all those community activities. So this would sort of be your first taste of this building, your first sort of introduction. From there, You'd be able to move down to the concourse space, or we'll call it the concourse. This is sort of just the main street through the building with nice viewing furniture. Those activity spaces off to your left, views into the pool. If you keep going around and look around, there's that lounge that looks over the park. Wonderful signage. And then if you spin around full circle, you're looking smack dab into that playground space. So these are all the things that we think make for a great sort of social, active, enriched environment in the building. And if you head upstairs, you get into more of the sport zone of the building. This is that fitness center. Again, you can see downstairs that seating lounge area. There's that wonderful fitness center looking out to the park through expansive windows. There's that amazing running track. Again, more views of that park. We're going to keep killing you with views of that park. And then there's that gymnasium space with the turf gym in the distance. We're actually playing with ideas of that being more closed off for safety and sort of functionality, but doesn't make for a very cool VR rendering if you block things with walls. So the wall, for the purposes of this, consider that wall transparent. And then that view out sort of overlooking the parking in the park. And then finally, last but not least, a view standing within the pool space and all the great amenities that are in there. Sort of this quality of warmth, and again, plenty of daylight, plenty of views out to the park. There's that lap pool, and you can see the spa in the distance there. The slide is something we'll obviously have lots of conversations about what type of slide, but for now, that's a pretty sizable water slide indoors. There's that spray ground. And then there's your sort of warm water leisure pool and dump bucket. And you can see kind of looking into that lounge space beyond, really transparent, really open. So hopefully this gives you a character of the building that we're proposing, a feel. Hopefully it reflects Shawnee, the values and all the great things we've come to learn about the community, but more importantly, the people that would spend hopefully generations enjoying a building like this. So hopefully that painted a good picture for you all. Advance that. Actually, let's try to get out of that. Oh, you will? Okay, great, thanks.
Maureen Rogers, Finance Director, and my heart says, just breathe. After all the 4 months of very detailed work on this project, this will start out the cost information with a high-level summary. This is a $38 million project. The greatest portion of it is construction, over $30 million, and there will be more discussion later in the presentation on all of these sections. We did a lot of work on soft costs, the professional services, furniture, fixtures, equipment, contingency, and then the $38 million does include estimated $500,000 for the operation subsidy for year one. The proposed community center and estimated annual subsidy would be funded with a property tax increase. If voters approve the project, the city would issue a 20-year general obligation bond later in 2019 with average annual payments of about $2.7 million. Shawnee's 2018 assessed valuation is just under $925 million. So since mil means a thousandth, 1 mil is worth $925,000. So in order to generate $2.7 million each year for the payments at $925,000, that takes 2.919 mils. You may remember that there was a table that had home values in the survey. We didn't have all this cost information at that time, so that was based on 5 mils. So this is a pretty significant reduction from 5 mils. We've expanded the home value table, and these materials will be out on the website for everybody to be able to see. And we're also working on an app where residents can just put in, or businesses just put in their address, and it will tell you what your increase is for your particular property. For the average Shawnee home of $263,130 would be an increase of about $88 a year, or if you divide that by months, of $7.36.
Good evening, Scott Sherry with J. Dunn Construction. So over the last 3 months, our team has been working extremely diligently with the design that Chris just presented. And as a team, we've put together a budget that everybody can be 100% confident in with the numbers that you're seeing this evening. Oops. The current estimate that we'll be presenting has been put together with a lot of information, not only from our design team, as well as along with information from the city, but we've actually reached out to a lot of local trade partners here in the area to help with a lot of the unit costs, commodity cost escalation, et cetera. Again, creating that 100% confidence in the number that we have today. We've taken a very systematic approach. We've set achievable goals for our entire team, and we've done what we call target value design. So we've taken critical line items within the project, and we've created targets that we've then been working with Chris and Rick with the design team to make sure we meet those targets and meet those goals throughout the entire process. As estimates are completed, we've all sat down in a group in a room. We've gone painstakingly through every line item to ensure every assumption, every intent of the design that Chris just presented is 100% accurate in the numbers that we're providing today. And then finally, we've been working hand in hand with Rad and Sam quite a bit in distinguishing between what we refer to as hard construction costs and the soft dollars, which Rad will speak to here a little bit more. We want to make sure there's no duplication in either of those. We also want to make sure that nothing's missing. We want to avoid any surprises that could occur once this building goes into construction. Like I said, the estimate's comprised of over 1,000 line items right now, but as we manage all the parts and pieces, we boiled it down to really 4 components. We've got the off-site improvements. We've got the site work, which is your site utility work, your excavation, your earthwork, those types of things. Community center, which actually is the building that Chris just presented, and then park improvements. And finally, what we've done as a team is we've compared this project to 3 other recent facilities that are either being constructed or have been built in the last 3 or 4 years in and around the Kansas City metro area. You can see on the screen right now, our cost per square foot for this facility falls right in line with all 4 of them. And actually, if you extract Lenexa, which is 100,000 square feet, and compare the other 65 to 70,000 square foot buildings, we're actually, from a cost per square foot standpoint, less than Merriam and Olathe. So, thank you.
Good, thanks, Scott. So just like Scott talks about the hard construction costs, and when we look at that, it is about 80% of that total budget that Marine was going through is that hard construction cost. The 1-year operating subsidy that Darren's going to speak to is a little over 1% of the total budget. And then the soft costs make up about 18%, 19%. So the same kind of a process that we went through was looking at all of those items, working with Scott and his team for that gaps and overlaps, make sure we've got that straightened out, who's got what in their budget, and make sure we're not missing anything with that. So we really brought it down to these major categories of having the professional services, which are really all the design engineering fees, consulting services, any of the testing, commissioning, those kinds of items all fall through the professional services. We had some miscellaneous costs that are really mostly in permits and approvals, utility connection fees, working with Westar Energy, the various utility companies, all of the outdoor and indoor furniture, the fitness equipment, any of the technology going into the building, the audio visual, which has quite a bit of that with the classrooms and the fitness space on the audio visual side. So similar to the hard cost estimate, we have about a 500 line item soft cost estimate for all of those items, 7 pages of really going from the bike racks that are out on the site down to the dumbbells that go into the fitness center and everything in between in that process. And then we do look at a contingency for the project. We can talk for a long time about contingencies, but what if something does change? What are the economic conditions going to be a year from now, a year and a half from now? We don't know a lot of those kind of things, so we recommended contingency and worked as a team. What's the appropriate amount at this point? And then on the escalation side, we know that we're looking at a cost today that's really going to be purchased in the second quarter of 2020 for actual installation in 2021 from the soft cost side of things. So we carry an escalation factor based on trending, just like Scott has in the hard cost side, going through that. So really went through a lot of similar kind of a process, getting historical lists and pricing from Chris and Rick and their teams, vendor input, various quotes that we got from various folks, and recent city purchases to be able to say, where is this project going to stand within the process? So this is just kind of a quick breakdown of that 18% of the project cost, of how much is in furniture, fixtures, and equipment, the professional services side, a little bit on the miscellaneous pieces, and then this contingency and escalation that's carried to be just short of $7.5 million on the soft costs. With that, Darren's going to talk about the operational side.
So my heart said be kind. I don't know if that refers to me talking or to the questions you guys are going to give us here in a few minutes. So my name's Darren Barr. I work with Ballard King & Associates. We've had the fortune of working with you for probably the past year, but I've done extensive work in Johnson County. So as we went ahead and went through the feasibility process and looked at operation numbers and memberships, there's a lot of projects that we've done and a lot of facilities that are open in the county that we were able to kind of compare back to. So it was trying to give you the best possible information. When we put our operational budget together, obviously we take a look at expenses and revenues. This just gives you an idea of the expenses that we take into account. One of the items that's not listed there under expenses is also we take into account the idea of what should you allocate on an annual basis so that after 3 or 4 years you have dollars sitting aside to go ahead and make some replacements to equipment and improvements to the facility. That might not necessarily be the way you go ahead and handle capital improvement budgets at this time, but it at least goes ahead and starts the conversation that once you get a facility like this up and running, it is going to require some continued maintenance and some continued upgrades, especially if it's as well received as we anticipate it will be. We also go ahead and we take the time to provide you some recommendations or some projections on revenues. Those take into a lot of different factors: memberships, daily fees, rentals, programs. Silver Sneakers is one of those programs. I joke with people that we can go ahead and probably make any facility look great financially on a piece of paper. But when we provide those revenue projections, we really do it based on the market that you're in, the other people that are around you, and our years of operating these facilities. We're one of the few firms that's actually gone ahead and taken some of our own feasibility studies and had to implement them. So we understand how important it is to be conservative as we're going ahead and looking at not only expenses but revenues for a year-to-year operation. A lot of numbers. We made sure that the negatives weren't in red, so it's not as jarring. What you go ahead and you see here is a 5-year projection. The most important thing that I can go ahead and share with you out of this is when you go ahead and when you get to year 3, that's typically what people go ahead and consider as normal. Okay. Year 1 in regards to this chart is your first full calendar year of operation. If you said to me, Darren, when's the absolute perfect time to go ahead and open a community recreation center? I would tell you early to mid-December, early January, right? Everybody's got their New Year's resolution. That's a great Christmas gift. You can go ahead and start your new fitness journey or just spending time as a family on a weekly basis. There's also advantages to going ahead and opening a facility when you're starting to talk about mid-year 2021. Allows you to do some things as it relates to open houses. It allows you to do some things for a program perspective. Provides you a little bit more flexibility. There are other community centers in the area that go ahead and that really the first thing that they tell us when they go ahead and we start a study is that we want this facility to be 100% cost recovery. That definitely impacts price points, market penetration, components, those types of things. When we looked at this facility, it was really with the idea that we want to try and be able to get as many people as possible, as many residents as possible into the facility. Because of that, we took a little different approach as it related to some of the programming, and as you'll see here in a second, as it related to some of the membership and expenses or revenue generation. Some other things to kind of talk about with operational costs, and I've kind of hinted at these. Revenue numbers are conservative. They're not at a maximum. I think the program numbers we provided you are 50 to 60% saturation, so you have some opportunity to grow there. The facilities aren't going to hit their normal. You're never going to hit normal in a recreation center, but as close to normal as you can get in year 3. And then because of that, we're talking about the potential for a $500,000 subsidy in the first full calendar year of operation. When we talked about membership, there's some things to consider when you're starting to talk about membership. It's not a requirement to use the facility. It's something that you have as an option depending upon how frequently your family or you as an individual are planning on using the facility. When you started talking about some of the facility components, sorry, be kind as I'm looking for my notes here. You start talking about some pretty unique things. The indoor aquatic area, you have some unique components. You've also got some recent facilities that have opened that have started to push the boundary a little bit. One of the things we heard very early on was we wanted to supplement the youth sports leagues and the youth sports organizations that are in the community, hence the artificial turf that's in there. Hence you're starting to talk about a multi-purpose court. The indoor playground, everybody's excited about the walking track after the weather we've had the past 2 months, but also the indoor playground as well. That's an opportunity for a unique component, but it also is a unique revenue generator as it relates to birthday parties and other types of fun things that you can do in the facility. Most organizations we work with provide some type of scholarship. Based on the demographics of your community, it kind of depends upon the size of scholarship that you go ahead and you have. We're not going ahead and we're not suggesting that everybody who uses the facility is going to be on some type of scholarship. As Chris alluded to, you kind of have the free side versus the pay to use side. So that's something that we would encourage you to do. There's also some really unique opportunities when you start talking about partnerships. You've got private organizations that are out there that might be willing to go ahead and fund scholarships. So it's a very fun talking point. It's one of those where it's a conversation that everybody wants to make sure that they have, but they have it in a meaningful way so that whatever program they put together, it makes the most sense. But not an uncommon occurrence when you go ahead and look at a community recreation center and their operation. Just a comparison for you, again, a lot of numbers at 8 o'clock at night, I apologize, but we're talking about resident rates versus non-resident rates. It's not uncommon to have a differential there. Some larger facilities will go ahead and especially if they're the only provider in the market, will go ahead and just do away with a non-resident versus resident differential. This really breaks down individual monthly, family monthly, and daily admissions. So gives you an example. Also talks about our annual memberships, going ahead and what we have to look at and how you go ahead and compare those. And then I always struggle with this part of the presentation, and it's a me thing, it's not a you thing. Everybody wants to go ahead and kind of benchmark where they're at compared to other providers in the area. We did the feasibility study for the city of Lenexa and helped them with their operation plan. The same thing for Mission. We did an overview or a peer review of Overland Park. Or not Overland Park, we did a peer review for Olathe, and we were also involved with Overland Park. So we're very familiar, but each one of these facilities is different. Okay, each organization has different financial goals. So comparing the membership rates is an important process to go through. But I think it goes ahead and it provides context. It doesn't necessarily mean, well, you have to do more, you have to do less. It simply goes ahead and shows you where you're at. One of the things that we heard in the community input process is let's not nickel and dime us for everything that we have so that you've got membership A, membership B, membership C. How much do we have to pay to get in and use the facility and use programs? If we want to do something like swim lessons, yeah, we need to add an extra fee onto that. If you want to do something like a specialty group exercise class or personal training, yeah, we need to add something onto that. A birthday party is not included with your annual membership. But basic access to the facility and how you go ahead and quote unquote enhance your membership from there is kind of based on a person by person basis. So with that, I think Neil is going to be up next.
All right, so schedule. So obviously tonight, we're talking about the resolution and the ballot question. February 26th, the resolution, that's the deadline to the county. The ballot delivery to elections is May 1. That's when it will be sent out. Election day is 21st. And then the final tab of the ballots we'll know on May 28th. So and then the final, if everything goes, the final design is June. I'm having a hard time looking at that, man. It's my bifocals. Start construction in March 2020. So there's a 10-month design and then probably a 16 to 18-month construction. And then we would open to the public in 2021. So if the residents direct us, this is what they're wanting. The team, we think we've got a good community center that they'll be proud of. And then after that, we can maybe have a party or something. So, but not just, if this is the direction they want us to go, this is what we would follow. So now I'm going to have Tyler come up and talk about the ballot language. Or no, Stephen, is that you? Nope, sorry, Stephen. Stephen first and then Tyler.
Hi, Stephen Powell, Deputy City Manager. My heart says you are beautiful, so I suppose that is in the eyes of the beholder.
You are beautiful.
So a little bit of information on the mail election. One of the questions that has been asked is why would we do a mail-in election? And there were several reasons for that. One is the cost of inflation goes up each month. The vote is scheduled out further. Also, according to the election office, voter turnout is higher in a mail election than it is in a standard general election. And with a mail election, every registered voter will have a ballot mailed to their home. So it, in many ways, provides a more convenient way for all voters to participate in the election. And then there are, I think, some community expectations around the mail election. And so we reached out to the Johnson County Election Board to find out about how much mail-in election would cost, and they have provided an estimate of just over $95,000. That fee is based on postage. So every registered voter would receive an envelope in the mail, and then there would be a return envelope that would be included with that ballot that they could send the ballot back to the election office. There's also staff time for the county election workers to process and count the ballots and then certify the results. And of course, that fee is completely based on voter turnout. And so in the 2019 budget, we do have $150,000 available for an election. And Tyler will come up and talk specifically about the ballot language.
Thanks, Stephen. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Tyler Ellsworth with the law firm of Kutak Rock, the city's bond counsel. I've been working with my colleague Joe Serrano on the election proceedings and working with staff and the city attorney and your consultants to figure out how we should go about sort of framing this in terms of the ballot language and looking at the proceedings that council is going to be requested to consider tonight when our presentation and the additional comments and questions are addressed. And so the first of those couple of action items is a resolution. And the resolution itself does a few things. It calls the election, which means it really authorizes your city staff to work with legal and to work with Johnson County to put the wheels in motion to get that mail ballot election sort of figured out, get it nailed down. There's some steps kind of behind the scenes that go on, but ultimately it puts us on track to get those ballots in the mail by May 1st to voters. The other couple of things it does is it includes a notice of election, and the form of the notice of election is attached to the resolution, and it's in the agenda materials, and that's a statutorily required notice that goes out and it's published 2 times before the mail ballots go out. And it basically provides information on the financial impact of the ballot question. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But the third item that the resolution does is it contains the ballot language itself. And so through the middle of last week, staff and consultants sort of wrestled with what the ballot language should be. And I would emphasize that it's a balancing act. It's always a balancing act when you put ballot language together to try and weigh, on the one hand, some specificity so that voters know exactly what it is they're authorizing, but on the other hand, acknowledging that this is a fluid process. You have designs that are presented tonight and a lot of ideas about what this project could be, but it's not built yet. And there's a lot of distance to travel between now, the election, if the vote approves the issuance of bonds, and when construction is completed. So we try to balance the unknowns that we face at this point with some certainty so that people know what they're voting on. So this is the ballot language that we came up with middle of last week, or arrived at the middle of last week. And essentially, the language is a question that asks voters to approve the issuance of bonds to finance this facility in an amount up to $38 million. It describes in a general sense what that facility would be. And after some additional input over the last few days, including up to this afternoon, we have added a portion, essentially a clause in that ballot language that makes clear, to give a complete picture, to sort of supplement all the information that the city has provided so far and the outreach efforts that the city will undertake between now and the vote, that this project is financed with bonds and that the bonds will be paid for with a property tax increase. So happy to answer any questions on that at the end when we get there.
All right. So as the mayor stated, the 4 recommendations that we're looking for tonight is consider approval a not to exceed amount of $38 million for the cost of the proposed community center. Consider approving a mail ballot election for the purpose of submitting to the qualified electors of the city question of issuing general obligation bonds for the purpose of paying for the cost of the proposed community center. Consider passing ordinance 3251, authorizing the insurance of obligation bonds in the amount of $500,000 to finance the initial operating cost. Consider adopting resolution number 1858, calling for a special question election in the manner prescribed by the Mail and Ballot Election Act. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for the presentation. So before I ask the council for any questions or comments, I do want to say that we have heard every single individual that has reached out to us, whether for it or against it. We have read every survey result, every email, every phone call, every handwritten letter mailed. Every single resident has been heard. All the feedback has been taken under consideration. And with that being said, I just want to commend the governing body that they're looking at this to not only put it on the ballot for the residents to make that decision, but a mail-in ballot to where every registered voter has the opportunity to vote for or against this item. And so I want to commend the governing body for that, and just let everyone know that you've all been heard and every comment has been taken into consideration, and we appreciate the feedback that everyone took the time to give us. So with that being said, does anyone on the council have any questions or comments? Mr. Jenkins.
I have a number of things. I have a couple questions first for the folks who made the presentations, and they're fairly simple ones. Just going to check back with you, because I know when we had the original presentation, I asked the question of whether or not we were going to have a capability within that building for people to protect themselves in the event of severe storms, and whether tornadoes specifically. And I don't think we really got back on that. And I was just curious if that was incorporated in somewhere into the design, because that place is wide open in the prairie. This is Tornado Alley. I worked with a lot of tornado victims over many years, so I'm concerned about that issue. Did anybody, do we do anything like that?
I can answer that. So Brad Way with Project
Can you-
Advocates. So the locker room area, as Chris went through in the center part, we've designed that to be what I'd call a hardened space of the building. It is not, we're not at least planning initially as FEMA designed, because that takes quite a bit more structurally, mechanical systems, separate plumbing. There's a lot to actually have a FEMA-rated shelter, but we've looked at it as a hardened shelter so that all the masonry block that's around that whole locker area and the family changing areas are all grouted and rebar. It has steel and concrete deck above. And so what I'd call a hardened area is considered in these conceptual designs and in the cost estimates for the project.
Well, that's great, because that should provide some level of protection, at least. I am concerned because of all the glass, especially, that building's got a lot of glass, and as you can imagine, that would get pretty wild in there if you had a tornado hit that building and all that glass is flying around at 150 miles an hour. That would not be pleasant.
And when you look at this plan, where we're talking about, it's the very center of the building, so
Right, I
it's,
understand. I remember seeing
away
that.
from those exterior walls.
But I wasn't sure, I wasn't aware you did reinforce that to a certain extent, so appreciate that. The other question I had was, we look at those operational costs and the fact there's a shortfall in operational costs on an annual basis, at least through the first 5 years you guys have projected. I'm just wondering, why would we operate at a loss? Why wouldn't our fees and so on cover the cost, so at least it'd be revenue neutral? That would make sense to me, that we would not have to go to the general fund, take funds out of the general fund to go pay the shortcomings over to community center, because just to give you a flavor for that, if I'm a taxpayer and I live in Ward 2, and I'm not saying I'm not going out here because I got my own Gold's Gym in my basement, so I'm not going out there. So I'm not only going to pay my property taxes every year, but I'm also going to wind up being, my portion of taxes I'm paying to the general fund, there's a chunk of that's being sent out there too to subsidize somebody else's membership fees. And that doesn't seem right somehow. It gives me a little bit of problem.
So as Darren spoke to a little bit, when we looked at the fees and the discussion that we had at that was trying to make the facility feasible and accessible to as many residents as possible. Also, as he spoke, those are very conservative numbers with a smaller, we can estimate that there will be more people participating in the programs or being members and helping to pay those fees, but we wanted to be realistic to get things off the ground and get started with those fees. So it's kind of a trade-off. When we look at the cost and how we compare to other facilities, we could charge more, but then is that going to limit the amount of people who can afford and participate and use the facility? So that was just some discussions that we had on the pricing that we started with. Obviously, something we can look at, but
Well, I understand what you're saying. I hope you understand what I'm saying as well. I know it's
absolutely.
between a rock and a hard place kind of thing here, but we don't want to drive people away. But at the same time, it's not really fair to make people that don't use the facility subsidize memberships.
Right.
I mean, they're not subsidizing, they're not building the building, they're subsidizing memberships at that
Right.
point. And I find that to be a little bit egregious, really.
Well, looking at, I think the philosophy that we've used was similar to our pools facilities and how we operate those. And we do have the lowest subsidized rate, cost recovery rate, or the highest cost recovery rate in Johnson County. And so we anticipate that also being seen over with the community center as well. But the fees are set by the council, and so that would be something that we could discuss as we move forward with the direction.
Okay, thanks. I just want to express a couple of concerns I had as well. Those were questions, these are some concerns. And some of the concerns I have, I think are pretty significant. First of all, I love the work. I think it looks great. It's a beautiful community center. I think everybody'd love it. But there are some issues as far as the nuts and bolts, like how do you pay for it and things like that. That's where you get down to the nitty gritty. But I'm concerned about the level of indebtedness for the city. In the last year or so, we've taken on quite a bit of bond debt. We're doing our Neiman now. We're doing some work out on Gleason. We're doing a new fire station 74. So we're borrowing money. And now we're going to borrow another $38 million. Now, maybe that's okay, but it does give me some cause for concern, because what that does is it kind of hems us in as far as our flexibility with projects that may come up that are very important to the health, safety, and welfare of Shawnee. And now we've already got all this debt. Can we get more debt? I mean, it's going to really, it puts a damper on things. It makes things a little more difficult as we move forward in the future. it competes with existing businesses here in Shawnee, and that bothers me a lot. If I owned Planet Fitness, I'd be mad as hell that we're going to put in a first-class workout facility, and I've invested my personal dollars in this business, and now I'm going to have to compete with the city of Shawnee. That just seems kind of unreasonable as well. I know it's what goes with the turf, but I mean, it causes me some problems. This facility is a pretty significant distance from Eastern Shawnee, and I represent Eastern Shawnee in Ward 2. And you're going to have to pack a lunch when you drive out there to go work out. It's a pretty good trip out there. If you look at some of the original maps that showed the service area for this facility, it didn't include most of Eastern Shawnee. So it actually, people living outside of Shawnee really were closer to it than a lot of the Shawnee residents. So, I know that's where the location is. That's where we bought land years ago and all that. But that's a cause for some concern. I worry about some of the things that are sitting on the back burner for us as a governing body that we're going to have to come up with some money for in the near future. Well, not necessarily near future, but in the reasonably near future. I know that we got a presentation from Doug Whitaker about our storm drainage issues. And when he put up a chart there showing $200 million in unfunded liabilities as far as what we may have to put out in the next 20 years to take care of our aging infrastructure on our drainage facilities, our drainage infrastructure. It's in pretty bad shape. And I know we're doing a lot of work right now to go out and evaluate those pipes and so on to see what kind of shape they're in. And we've got a classification system all set up from 1 to 4 about which one's really bad and which ones aren't quite so bad. But the bottom line is we're going to have to pay for all that. And the $200 million, that's a lot of bucks. So, while we're spending money, I think it's a great center. And like I say, I can't overemphasize the fact that I think it's a beautiful facility. I think a lot of people would really enjoy it. But we have to get back to some reality stuff as well. And it does concern me. The last thing I had was really a concern is Resolution 18. Well, there's two more things. Ordinance 3251. Here we're going to go borrow $500,000 before we've even got a project that's approved to pay for. It seems kind of crazy to go out and borrow money for something that hadn't even been approved. I know that's because you got it on this fast track. We got the Gantt charts. We got all this. And we're trying to make everything come together and culminate in a timely manner and so on. But to spend $500 million, $500,000, sorry, before you've even, approved the project. What if it gets voted down? We just blew $500,000. So I don't know if it's going to get shut down or not, but that's up to the voters. But that brings me to the voting part of it, which is Resolution 1858. And in Section 3, we have the wording. I have some problems. I don't have any problems with the wording at all. That's what's going to happen. When you put things on a ballot, you don't put all this extra stuff in there. So what I'd like to see is when the city elections office mails this out there, the county elections office mails it out, that they include a one-page info fact sheet that people can look at, so you get kind of an executive summary at a glance almost. And we've already got the stuff done, so the insert would include one of the things you just already sounds like you're going to put in there, which is the part about it will create an increase in property taxes. We got a table. Just boom. This will result in an increase in property taxes if approved. There's the table right there that shows people approximately how much per this value of home and so on. The information is already available. I think that we could put in there that the increased property tax will not expire. So once the building's paid off, we're going to keep paying the property taxes. I think that's something people should be aware of. To utilize the community center, membership dues are going to be charged. Do people just think this is a happy little deal where we're going to build this center and we all get to go use it? Well, time out. You're going to be paying for this too. You're going to pay a membership. And I just want to be sure people know that. And a lot of them probably do already know that, but a lot of people don't know that. They say, hey, they're building us a new community center. Yay, I'm going to go work out. And whoops, I need $800 if you're going to work out this year or whatever. So I think that's something we need to let people know about. And I already mentioned something about those operating costs. I'd like them to pay for themselves. This is crazy that we're going to have to not only build this place, but we're also going to have to pay a substantial sum of money every year out of our general fund just to subsidize the losses of operating the facility. And I think some of those losses I'm kind of concerned about as you go in the out years. In the first 5 years, you show it being not too bad. It's 400-something thousand, and it drops down to about 250,000 into year 5. But what about when that equipment starts going bad? and we started having to do a bunch of major grouting or repairs to HVAC systems and things like that. I don't know if it's all incorporated in there or not. I don't see how it could be if it's just in the first 5 years, because that stuff's going to be impacting down the line. And just one last thing in that little insert would be just a link, because we've already got all this info out there, but people don't go look at all that stuff. And now I got a ballot from me. I'm getting ready to spend a whole bunch of money, and maybe I'll go look. So make sure we put the website on there, the city's website, and this is where the information is, and we encourage you to go look at it and make a good decision. So where I'm going with this is I really would like people to make a good decision. And whether it be, yeah, let's do it, or no, let's don't, I just want it to be a good decision and one that we can rely on. And it wasn't one that we just kind of blew past them and got them to vote for something, and they go, whoa, I didn't know I had to pay membership fees. Oh my God, I didn't know this was going to be paying this for the next 20 years. Geez, I didn't know this and that. I mean, let's just be upfront and transparent. That's all.
Maureen Rogers, Finance Director. I can address a couple of your questions. On the indebtedness level, we've talked a little bit in the past about how a number of years ago, when I came in 12, we had about $95 million outstanding debt. And the city has been pretty rapidly paying down debt and shortening the terms of the bonds from 15 to 10 years. And so even with the new bond issue that comes up later in this agenda, our level is down to about $52 million. And so that's a fairly large reduction. It's a very large project. It's the largest project that Shawnee has ever done. So definitely something to consider. We did talk to Moody's in conjunction with the other bond issue. And they always ask us what are our future plans. And so we talked quite a bit about the proposed community center. And a couple of things that the Moody's representative mentioned was, because it is to be funded with the tax increase, that doesn't put as much burden on our existing funding, even though a current council can't bind a future council. Because of the fact that it's bonds, there is a requirement that the bond payments be made and that appropriations be made for that. And also, we have peers. They look at statistical information and compare us to benchmarks for a AA1 city. And he felt like that adding this level of debt was not going to take us beyond our peers. As to the item on the agenda about the 500,000, that is rather confusing, because the reason that is called out as a special item is because it requires a different legal authority than the bonds we usually issue, because it's for operations. Normally, we are not allowed to bond for operations, but in this situation, with your approval, there is legal authority. And we would not be bonding or borrowing any money before the election. It would actually be part of the same bond issue that would fund the rest of it, but there would be a tax exempt and a taxable portion. The operational portion would be taxable. So yeah, that's kind of confusing to have that called out, but that's how it would actually work.
Tyler Ellsworth of QTech Brock, the city's bond counsel, and I want to address two comments that were made. One is that the property taxes will not expire, and I know that there are a lot of concerns about this increase in property taxes, and taxes are going to stay at this level, even after the debt's paid off. There's not a sunset clause of any sort written into the ballot language or described in the proceedings, and that's correct. There is no sunset here in a technical sense. Although what we're proposing to do and what we've come up with in terms of financing the project and structuring the bond issue is a 20-year term bond. And so the city is committing, if the voters approve this bond issue to finance the project, they are authorizing the city to issue bonds up to 20 years that have to be repaid during that time. And so the property tax increase that might be necessary to support that debt, principal and interest, would only be in place for 20 years. Now, you do raise a good point about maintenance and ongoing costs and operating costs and things like that. But with respect to the duration of the property taxes and with respect to a question about whether there's sort of a light at the end of the tunnel, whether this is just going on into the future indefinitely, there will be sort of a maximum 20-year term on this debt, which means that there's more or less a maximum 20-year request to increase. Well, the tax. Well, it depends on what your budget is. It depends on what your budget is. The bonds will be retired after that 20th year, so you won't need to levy taxes for principal and interest on them.
Once you've been enacted. It's enacted, it's there.
Well, it's part of your budget process each year. Annually, you look at what your expenditures will be and set your mill levies accordingly. And so in that 21st year, yeah, and it may be that there are other budget priorities that gets diverted, but, right. Okay. Yeah. So the duration of the debt is 20 years. And with respect to the informational statement that might be included in the mail ballot materials, we have looked at that, and I think that point is well taken. We have actually reached out to the county elections office, who sort of under Kansas law, the county has an election commissioner that by statute conducts the mail ballot proceedings. And we've inquired whether they've done similar informational statements in the past with other mail ballot elections. The answer to that question was no, but we're continuing to engage with the county's legal department and the county election office to see what, if anything, we can provide that is actually in that envelope that the voters receive. Now, this is all a supplement to the efforts on the part of the city that are ongoing to communicate with voters either through their website, through mailers, through press releases, et cetera, to try and get the word out about exactly what the nuts and bolts of the project and the implications of the vote will be. But it's up in the air at this point whether or not we will actually be allowed by the county to put something in that envelope that the voters receive. So I just wanted to update you on where those discussions were and talk about some alternatives that we've considered to try and get the message out.
And then additionally, even if the county commissioner would allow it, what was it, the Secretary of State has to approve it. And so far, there's been no history of that being allowed. So having the one sentence in the question helps to clarify some of that so that the residents are assured that the community center is not impacting their public safety or their infrastructure or anything else, because it doesn't appear that they're going to allow an insert.
And part of our educational campaign would include direct mailings. We've put aside some funds to do a pretty extensive direct mailing. We did talk with the election office about getting a list of the registered voters who are in the city, so we can make sure that they get information about all the nuts and bolts of the project and what the costs are. We also have our city line that is will go out in March. So if everything is approved tonight, then all that would be in the March city lines. And we also have of course, our website, all of our social media accounts. We are putting together a speakers bureau to go out and talk to homeowners associations and civic organizations and churches, and we will do everything we can to make sure, you know, as many people as possible are educated on the ballot question and kind of what the implications would be in terms of the tax increase. So we would start an educational campaign to reach as many folks as we could over the next few months.
And then one other thing I just wanted to add too, so as, in regards to the location, it is just 1 mile from the geographical center of the city. And I know when you're on this side of town, it seems like it's way on the other side of the town, but it is almost in the geographical center of the city. So as we build as a city, it'll be probably about the most centralized location that it could be in. Yeah, but understood. Any questions? Councilmember Meyer.
Yeah. Just some comments as well. First, I want to echo what the mayor has said and thank all of the residents who've taken the time to contact the governing body over the last several weeks, months, and in some cases even years about this project, as well as all of you who are here tonight. So thank you. In my time on council, as I've talked about, this has been an absolutely unprecedented response, and I think it really speaks volumes about the level of commitment and engagement of all of our citizens on all sides of this issue. So thank you for that. I also want to thank city staff and the entire team for their incredible work on this proposal. I'm so excited about it. I think it looks fantastic. I think you've really captured the spirit of what has long been envisioned with this process, and I appreciate your efforts to engage the community in that as often as possible. So thank you for that. I do believe that tonight's vote is about more than brick and mortar, though. I think it is about the kind of community we want to be. What we think of when we think of the future of Shawnee. For me, this vision includes continuing to be an amazing place to live, work, and play. That goes beyond providing essential services, which we're doing, by the way, in many cases at record levels. Our police force has 12 new officers. Fire Station 74 is now open with additional funding dedicated for remaining capital needs for that department. We are repairing and repaving more lane miles than ever before, all while maintaining a higher than average rainy day fund. Our financial house is in order. Be certain of that. So whether you share this vision with me or not, that is fine, but it is clear from the response that we've seen over the last several months that this is an issue that the public would like the opportunity to weigh in on, and we owe them that opportunity. How many of us here tonight have argued for all sorts of funding and vacancy issues to be settled by the public at the ballot? We do it all the time. For that philosophy to hold, we must support that mechanism, even when we don't necessarily agree with the potential outcome. Do the people deserve to be heard, or don't they? And if they don't, I would be interested in why that is. For 15 years, residents of Shawnee have heard plans for a potential community center. During that time, many have been forced to use centers in other cities, as we've discussed. Those folks are ready to bring those dollars home to their community, to our community here in Shawnee, to create a space that further brings us together with recreational opportunities for all. For 15 years, our residents have waited for the city to honor this promise. Tonight, we have a chance to tell them that they have been heard. And as I've said during every step of this process, it is my pleasure to voice continued support to bring the Shawnee Community Center to a public vote for approval. And I hope that my colleagues this evening will join me.
Any other questions, Mr. Neighbor?
Yeah, I would just, I see Chris had to leave here, but back in August, I had the opportunity, he guided us through the Commerce City, I believe it's Buffalo Ridge is the name of their community center, which they designed. And it is, I see an awful lot of what was there and what was presented tonight. I also see a number of improvements that the Buffalo Ridge people already had identified that Chris put in this program. So I think it's a good idea. And as far as saying anything else, just dittos to what Councilwoman Meyer just said, I will be supporting Resolution 1858 and Ordinance 3251.
Any other questions or comments?
Mayor, may I weigh in?
Yes, we were going to ask you, but go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just wanted to really thank the many residents who have weighed in. I've gotten over 65 emails just today, both with the pros and con perspectives. I really do appreciate the email as well as the in-person feedback, the suggestions, as well as the clarifying questions. I really appreciate that we have so many active residents who ask these questions and help to make the process even better. I really want to thank our Parks Department as well as Finance and all city staff for your efforts in taking the input of diverse stakeholder groups into account for this design throughout the entire process. And I really appreciate the willingness of staff who work to incorporate suggestions from myself, from residents and other council members for how to communicate the details of the proposed community center with voters. It's my opinion that Shawnee voters deserve the right to vote on this proposed community center and mill levy increase, weighing in and making their voices heard. A no vote from me today would deny Shawnee residents the opportunity to make this choice that has individual financial and quality of life impacts. So for this reason, I support moving forward and allowing each voter to make the choice on a mail-in ballot.
Thank you. Any other
Thank
questions?
you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Kimling?
I have a lot of I share a lot of the same reservations as Eric here and concerns on this issue, so I won't just merely repeat those. But I do have a question on the proposed shortfall in revenue. I noticed that we projected this out to 5 years, and I'm curious why we only projected it to 5.
Darren Barr with Ballard King and Associates. Typically, we've gone ahead and done 5 because the market can be stable for that period of time. We're trying to look beyond that. We're not sure what other community facilities could come online, so we just went ahead and looked at the 5.
Okay, because usually in our budget that we're going to start here soon, we get a 10-year projection on a lot of the stuff we take action on. So this is half. And one of the things I noticed on this is that it's got decreasing subsidies until year 4, where it then goes up in year 5.
Sure.
So I was hoping that there would be some linear decrease, but I'm wondering if that's a point of inflection or why that increase in year 5.
Sure. So when we go ahead and once we hit year 5, there's 2 different things that can happen. Within the framework of the report, you're starting at a point with your fee structure that you're allowing yourself opportunity to go ahead and reevaluate. One of the things that we encourage folks to do is every 2 to 3 years, regardless of the financial health of the operation, you're going ahead and taking a look at where you're at in regards to the market. If at that point you go ahead and decide that you want to narrow that gap, that's an opportunity to go ahead and increase those fees, whether it's membership fees or daily admission fees. Once you go ahead and once you get out to year 5, if you've not gone ahead and made any of those corrections or many of those adjustments, while you're going to go ahead and you're going to start to see a flat line or a modest increase as it relates to revenue generation, that's really where you're going to go ahead and you're going to start to see some of those dollars go ahead and kick in and need for additional expenses, whether that's new layer of paint, whether that's repairs to equipment. That's also why, and it's not pictured in that 5-year plan, why we're going ahead and saying, okay, if you're allocating somewhere between $100,000 to $150,000 on an annual basis, by the time you get to year 5, you've got that reserve where you can make some of those adjustments to go ahead and hopefully keep that as flat as possible. One of the pitfalls that we see other organizations fall into is that they go ahead and they exceed those financial expectations and say, we're going to just keep going. We're not going to look at any kind of corrections in terms of our marketplace or our price point. And then when we go ahead and we start to see a decline in revenue or a decline in memberships, why would we go ahead and increase our rates at that point if we're already declining? So that's the break point. There's no, is there rhyme and reason? Yeah, we've typically gone out to 5 years. We can go ahead and we can extrapolate out further. It just gets more and more iffy when we go out that way.
All right. Thank you. Sure. And then a question on the mail ballot. I think, Stephen, I'm not sure if you would answer this one or not. I guess I wasn't 100% clear on why the price would increase with increased voter participation for the mail ballot.
More postage.
Postage going out is going to be the same.
It would be postage of the additional ballots coming back.
So we only pay the returns on the ones that come back. It's not like you put a stamp on wedding invitation or something. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yeah, just a point of clarification, because I don't know, listen to some of the comments, I got the feeling that maybe people were saying that I was against the public voting on this. I hope not, because that wasn't the point at all. And my point is would be that I really want the public to vote on it. I think that's the best solution of all. In fact, I'm thrilled that the public's going to vote on it instead of us just voting on it, because that's really an opportunity for them to say what they want. I just want that to be an informed decision. That's where I'm coming from. So I want them to have, the public to have as much information as possible. So when they vote yes or no, whatever the choice is, that's an informed choice, and we get a true representation of what they want at the end of the process. So that's where I'm coming from.
Right. Any other questions or comments from the council? Okay. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak to this item? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Chris Durbin, 7412 McCoy Street. I'm Ward 4, so this is right in my backyard. I wanted to point out that, in my opinion, this entire proposal just seems overly forced. It starts with the master plan study. I think there were 74 respondents in the open houses, and I think we heard tonight that there were 543 survey questionnaires that were responded to. And I think more importantly to how many people responded to those survey questions were how many that did not. How many questionnaires were actually sent out, because I know it was selected randomly out of the entire city. Does anybody have an answer to that? 3,000 were sent out. Okay. You know, I was one of the ones that got that survey, and I had a very difficult time responding to it because the questions were framed in such a way that it implied that the city was going to build a community center no matter what. And it didn't really give me, as a citizen, an opportunity to really decide, you know, whether or not this was necessary for the city or not. It was, we're going to do this. Now, how do you want us to do it? So, you know, as the council votes tonight on whether or not a ballot needs to go out on this or not, you know, personally, I don't want to see one because I don't think the citizens have had a fair opportunity to weigh their opinion on this matter in that master planning process. A couple other questions I have. Mr. Jenkins, you mentioned about the operational costs, and I looked at those numbers too, and they didn't make a lot of sense to me. First of all, the 5-year expense escalation was estimated at only a 1.8 increase over that 5-year period, but the revenue escalation was estimated at 4.5% over the same period. And with added cost, or with added revenue is obviously added cost. So I'm not sure how that's possible. But let's just assume that, you know, that's right. And if you extend that out to the 10 years, you're looking at a total of a $2.83 million deficit over that 10 years if it's just a 2% increase each year of both revenue and expenses. And if you're being more realistic and you're using the same type of calculations, but let's just say that you use the same rate of escalation for revenue as you do for expenses, then you're talking about a $5 million deficit in that 10-year period. And I don't think that we're being honest with ourselves and those numbers, because we see, you know, $250,000 on the screen, but in reality, we're talking about millions of dollars over the near term that we have deficits in our budget for. Let's see here. I also think the ballot language should fully disclose the cost to the citizens. We've heard that question raised a few times here tonight, and you know, I'm not sure what the best way is. I'm not sure. It's probably not legal to send, you know, a flyer of any form in the mail with a ballot, but you know, the ballot language that we saw today does not represent to citizens who don't expect this thing to come in the mail on how to answer the question. It's just not fair. Not everybody is aware that this thing is coming. I know a lot of my neighbors have no idea that this is coming. So, you know, you get a ballot question in the mail and you see, oh, you know, $38 million, mill levy, whatever. It sounds fun. Let's do it. You know, but you're absolutely right. There's a membership fee to actually participate and use this community center in the way it was designed to be used. And then even then, we're talking about millions of dollars in shortcomings over the next 10 years at the very least.
Just to let you know, you have 1 minute left.
Okay. I'm done.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Ray Ehrlichman, 7510 Garnett Street. I'm going to help answer Dr. Kemling's question about the cost of the ballot. I did my own research. I'm going to give copies of it to the city clerk to give you folks after the meeting. Their estimate was pretty close, but it's actually going to be closer to about $104,000, well within the budgeted amount. The return postage is 55 cents for each one that comes back. Outgoing postage is 38 cents. But it'll all be explained on this sheet that I've worked on. So we'll go there. I was happy to see that the city did put up on the website the quick reference guide that we had talked about at a previous meeting. One thing, though, was left off that guide, and that was exactly what Mr. Jenkins was talking about, which was the negative operating expenses over the 5 years. Most of the other important charts were in that guide. That one was left out. So I would hope if we were going to make reference to that website during the education process that we do add that information. And I would ask the city clerk to please bring up that portion of the bond council, was that what? About the bond question. If we can bring that back up on there. Where you had that additional item in red. Okay, my eyes. Now, this is not what was in the packet. The additional item in red has been added since the packet was prepared. So my question is, when you folks take your vote tonight as to putting the ballot question out there, is this going to be the final version of the ballot question with the additional red 2 lines in there referring to the mill levy increase?
That's up to the governing body when they make the motion.
Hey, pardon?
That will be up to the governing body when they make the motion.
That would be up to the governing body. Okay, I just want to know how that was done. Thank you. I think that is probably one of the most important things to be on the ballot question. I think telling people that we're going to do a $38 million bond is one thing, but I think the people have a right to know where that money is coming from. And I would sincerely hope that the council would vote to include those 2 lines that the bond council added to that, because that way you're giving out full information, full disclosure to the people. And this is what you wanted. We wanted a vote by the people, and that's the right way to do it. But let's give them full disclosure. So I think it's important that those 2 additional red lines stay in there. And that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
I'm Tracy Thomas, 13022 West 76 Terrace, Ward 4, and my heart says, just say no. I've been in marketing over 40 years. One word that's not been mentioned at all tonight is Wyandotte County. You would think our northern border was Canada. You know, you're always looking to the south. We're always trying to compete with Lenexa. But if you look that way, it's Wyandotte County. They don't have any rec centers. You know why? They cannot control idle youth. They have 6 rec centers that close, that are Monday through Friday, that close at 5 o'clock. They serve lunch to seniors and play bingo, and maybe they have a wedding or a quinceanera or a combo. But they're going to be coming. And if you look at your pricing for non-resident families, I even plussed it up 20%, and it comes out to 72 cents a day for a family of 5 from Wyandotte County. The mom and her 4 teenage kids, the mom can come in and exercise a little bit, take a shower, leave her 4 kids that you can babysit all day, every day, and all evening, 7 days a week for 72 cents a person. You have no idea what's coming. You know, look at Kemper Arena. When they moved it over to the Sprint Center. They still owed $5 million on the bonds. And a group said, well, we need like teen centers. We'll come up with we'll turn it into a sports center for teens. And the city said, no, we're tearing it down. And they're paying the $5 million on a failed center that they could have done. I don't really think that you know what you're doing. You haven't done any marketing. The city doesn't have a marketing plan. The park board doesn't have a marketing plan. Neil, I love you. I helped hire you. But if you can't run the little community center, why should we give you 67,000 square feet to run? Because I don't think you know what to put in there. Lenexa has 4 party rooms. You only put in 2. That's like their number one draw is party rooms. I don't think you see that health clubs are an industry that has peaked. And you're going to be stuck. This is going to be harder to repurpose than a big box store. So, and Tyler, if you didn't know, on Friday at 16 minutes till you publish the packet, that you should put in the ballot wording that it includes the property tax, I don't think you know what you're doing. And then you're trying to con...
You have to direct your comments.
Okay, fine. And then you're trying to con Ronnie Metzger into signing that memo. Ronnie's not a lawyer. He's not a resident. He has no force of law as the election commissioner. He's a wonderful man who's a TV evangelist from the last century. If you want to be transparent, put in the ballot what you're trying to get people to vote for. You can say how much the property tax increase will be. If we can't trust you for 2 months from May till July when you have your budget meeting, then we can't trust you at all. Say, Ellis and I have gone over this and over this the last 10 days to try and find out, why don't you put in what it is? Also mention the interest. And that it never sunsets. You can put that in the ballot, that it's a property tax that will not sunset. Just a sales tax can sunset. You can put it in. And that put in that it does not include facilities use, that it requires a membership. That it put in that it is not estimated to pay for itself. You didn't want to mention it, put it in red, because it'd be so jarring. Well, it's jarring to my wallet, too, when you put through a building that doesn't pay for itself, and that you're going to have to dig out of the police and fire and the general fund to cover for this palace that's too far away and people aren't going to go to. You're violating the 2017 Kansas tax lid bill that requires voter approval for all property tax increases. You're just ignoring that. And Ellis has made that pretty clear to me, that you just want to do, you want the old way. Instead of the public approving property tax increases, you're going to meet in July, and it's probably going to be much higher than 2.919. That's why you tried to get Ronnie to sign the memo, because that's not what it's really going to be, because it won't cover your costs.
You're at 5 minutes.
All right, I'll please come back later.
Are there any other comments from the... Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Brian Bolin, 11922 West 72nd Street. We're about 12 minutes from this proposed facility if I drive the speed limit. I'm currently the chairperson of the Shawnee Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and was also on the initial selection committee for the RFQ for this project dating back to 2017. This past Thursday, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board heard the same presentation as you have tonight and voted unanimously to approve and forward this plan to the council for its consideration. We have discussed this topic for many months, paying special attention to comments and input from our neighbors, friends, and families from all over Shawnee. Additionally, countless hours have been spent to present a plan we felt best supports the growth of our city and recreation needs of our community. It is in the best interest for all of Shawnee that the citizens of this great city are given the opportunity to vote via ballot whether to move this project forward or not. It is the desire of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to keep our citizens recreating in this city. And we hope the time and efforts of all involved will not be in vain, and this project moves forward to a public vote. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Mayor and council members, my name is Tony Gillette. I live at 21613 West 60th Terrace in Western Shawnee. Prior to that, I actually lived in Lake Point, which did not have a neighborhood pool. Where I live today, 6 years later, does have a neighborhood pool. And I bring that up to the council members and to you is because I lived in Shawnee for over 20 years now, and I've been waiting for a third pool while I raised two young boys in Western Shawnee for 20 years. And so I've watched this project go for since 2003. I think that I think as a city, we've really missed an opportunity to partner with USD 232. Went to their meetings regarding this pool project in conjunction with the city of Shawnee. And so I think we have a really lost opportunity to partner with them, which is shuffling costs to be able to do this project as a Shawnee project only. The land that was there was originally for a third pool and not necessarily for a community center. Regarding the ballot issue on the mill levy, my question that I have for you as a voter and as a homeowner, will there be specifics of what the mill levy increase would be on this ballot initiative?
No.
So it's not specific. Then with that in mind, I would vote no, ask you to vote no on this mail ballot issue. I think there's way too much information that is not in front of the public. We're voting for a community center. We don't know that it's going to be a membership project. We don't know what the costs are for our increase in taxes. We don't know what the cost is to run this facility 5 years later, what the debt indebtedness will be to our city, and it's 20 years in bonds. So with that, I would ask you to vote. I would want this to go to vote to the people, but I would rather it be on a ballot in November with a long list of information, and then you can then take the extra 4 months to inform the voters properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something, a couple things. I want to say that I think the city would love to partner with DeSoto on the community center or the pool, and I will say that the city is not the partner who walked away from those conversations. So I agree with you that it would be a wonderful opportunity. So I want to make sure that that's clear. It was not the city of Shawnee. And there will be information, as we've discussed, pretty robust information going to every voter, every resident actually in the city of Shawnee with that information, because the intent, of course, is to let folks know, which I think is why we're kind of talking about the language now to be as specific as we can. So we certainly, I don't think anybody here or anybody in the city wants anyone to feel like they've been misled in the process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Okay. Seeing none, as I stated earlier, there are 4 recommended actions. The first is to consider approving a not-to-exceed amount of $38 million. I'm sorry. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Eric Danielson. I live at 4925 Roundtree Street here in Shawnee. And as you previously had mentioned, we took the time to develop a citizen information group for this opportunity. Just as a point of record, I want to make sure that I'm not out of motion to go through this pursuant to that CIG language. Is that correct? Great. Excellent. Well, this is very exciting from my perspective because we do have the opportunity to do something that the citizens have been asking for a number of years. And I certainly don't need to or anticipate taking the full 30 minutes tonight, because a lot of the things that I had anticipated had to say have already been expressed by a number of council members as well as a number of our community members here and our consultant team. Though I want to make sure that we're separating the issues tonight. The difference between supporting this project, which I vehemently do, and the opportunity for our citizens to vote for it. The opportunity for their citizens to vote for it, I think, will really create a lot of good opportunity for everyone here that supports the project to have their voice and have their vote heard. Between now and May 21st, when these ballots are received, we as a citizen interest group will do our efforts and make sure that everything that we've heard from our consultant group today can be relayed and informed out to our voters to make sure that they have gotten the requisite education so that they can make an informed decision on this opportunity. But I know that Shawnee wants this recreation center because of the fact that we've had an opportunity to be both engaged and to listen. For the record, I just wanted to repeat some of the things that we've already heard, and as it relates to residents having the opportunity to express their concerns and or their desires for this community center. So let's work backwards chronologically. First, there were 2 public meetings last month that I had the opportunity to attend on January 15th at Shawnee Mission Northwest and on January 16th at Monticello Trails. The entirety of our consultant team for the project was there and gave an opportunity to the citizens to reach out with them, talk specifically about what some of those design issues were that were presented at both of those informational meetings. There was the aforementioned by Mr. Neighbor presentation to the governing body from the Parks and Rec staff on October 3rd. Again, more public disclosure about what was going on with the project. And also the same governing body update received from on August 7th as well. And then there were open houses back at the beginning of 2018 on April 4th and March 8th. So I really wanted to make sure that everyone has recognized the fact that there have been a number of opportunities to be engaged in this process. And I certainly appreciate the fact that the governing body and the rest of our council is allowing us that opportunity for engagement. The other reason that I know that Shawnee really wants this recreation center is because I've been listening. I've been listening to a lot of the different groups and organizations that I interact with, talking with the fellow parents at Prairie Ridge Elementary School and Monticello Trails Middle School, where my children go to school. Everyone's talking about their utilization of the rec center. From an anecdotal standpoint, I think we can see a lot of planned use by a number of parents. Not to mention that I've already promised my youngest child that he can have his 9th birthday party there. And so he's the envy of the rest of his 1st grade class, but spoiler alert, I think everyone is going to want to have their birthday party there, so he's probably not going to be the only one. A lot of interactions with the coaches and the parents and athletes within the recreational and sports community facilities that we have here, Oaken Field House, the gymnast at Mill Creek Activity Center, the indoor soccer complexes like the Legends and All-American. Just like any other Johnson County parent, this is where I invest my time in all these places with my children as they participate. There's been a number of comments that have been made in relation to this will be so much nicer to have so close to home, as opposed to having to go outside of our community to go find these types of facilities. We've also heard a lot when visiting the Monticello Library, listening to the patrons and staff who are talking about how social infrastructure can really improve and have a community benefit. The consultant team, we've already talked about everything that they've been able to put forth. And last and certainly not least, if you haven't had a chance to attend any of those opportunities, it's all out online. I mean, this has been as transparent as a process as I've ever seen. I recognize that there's some negativity here about the project and some of the things that have already been voiced, and I certainly can understand those positions. But I think at this stage, all they're asking for is the same thing that we are asking for, which is the opportunity for this to go to ballot and for us to show our level of support for the project by utilizing the power of the poll. So in closing, today's not a referendum on the project. The governing body doesn't have to pick a winner or loser in this. You guys are in the best position you possibly can be. You just get a chance to listen to your constituents. let us do your bidding on this one. Let us be the ones who tell you whether or not we think this is a good idea for our community or not. Between today and May 21st, citizens will have a lot of opportunities to hear from the citizen interest group, and we will let them know the education that we're going to be given by our consultant team and the rest of city staff. Our group is committed to voting yes on this important issue. And I know that, and the community will have that opportunity to hear what this investment into our community really means, because when I hear operating at a loss, I actually hear making an investment in our community. These are the way that these types of facilities work, and we understand that. So, Madam Mayor, the rest of the governing body, I implore you to allow the citizens of Shawnee the opportunity to vote on this important issue. Excuse me. Please vote yes on these 4 items tonight, so we have the opportunity to vote yes ourselves in May.
Thank you.
I stand for any questions that any of you will have. From my perspective, happily to give those.
Mr. Jenkins.
Thanks for coming. Comments and have up to 30 minutes. Had to fight hard with the rest of these guys to make that possible, and you're the first one that's actually done that, so hey, it's good to see somebody using that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So, as I stated earlier, there are 4 recommended actions. The first is to consider approving a, yes.
The rules say that I may speak a second time, and I would ask for your indulgence.
Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
Tracy Thomas, 13022 West 76th Terrace in Seven Hills. Former council president, served for 5 years. Okay. If people want more information, there is a group called No More Taxes Shawnee. It's on Facebook. When we built the Shawnee Community Center, the gym floor fell apart, and it wasn't under warranty. And at the time, that was $300,000. Today, that would be close to $1 million. Those kind of contingencies are not in your packet. I respect the gentleman who just spoke, but when he calls it negativity, I think that's a pejorative. I think that people are speaking up about facts, and they have skepticism, and they have business experience that hasn't been reflected. So let's not put it down when people like Mr. Jenkins raise all these issues and questions, that he's not being negative. He's being a prudent businessman, and thank you very much. Shawnee has no master plan. You're going to vote for one after this. Your park board has never had a master plan in 165 years. There are failures all around you that you did not research, health clubs that are failing everywhere. If you have to borrow $500,000 just to get started, what's the difference between that and KCI, where today they're borrowing $90 million and going to try and sneak around and tear down part of the airport to keep it from being reconsidered? You know, this mother that wrote me from Wyandotte County said, it takes more than the Legends Mall and Cinemark Merriam to raise a child. How many of you don't let your children go to the plaza by themselves, even for prom night, or Westport, which has become a war zone? How many of you don't let your kids go to the Cinemark Merriam or the Oak Park Mall? We have a real problem that we're not facing. That's not negativity. That is honesty and the facts. One time I bought a membership to the Suter pool, took my niece and showed her my name on the plaque. And I said, let's go use the lazy river because I made them build it. And Neil had brought in 10 buses of kids from Wyandotte County. And for 3 hours, we could not use the inner tube one time because people of little means often have a sense of entitlement, and they had a gang holding on to those inner tubes and wouldn't let us use them. We even offered $3 and never got to even use the lazy river. You all received a letter from David Williams that was remarkable, and I hope you read that this week and take that into consideration. Mail-in, I would say to Tony Gillette that mail-in ballot is much better. You might have a 39% response as opposed to an 8 or 10% response. But as for saying that it would be more informed in November, The length of the ballot is up to you. You can put in as much detail as you want in the ballot wording. Quit trying to blame it on everybody else. Say what it is. Say that it has no sunset. That's crazy. And the fact that you just came up with this these 2 lines in red, since you presented the packet, that's sneaky. If you don't even know what should be in the ballot wording, you should table this until you can get it straight. Maybe table it until you're ready to commit to the true mill levy. And as for the 2 meetings, those were pin the tail on the donkey meetings. Those were non-meetings. Nobody had on a name tag. There was no presentation, no microphone. If somebody asked a question, you're supposed to just walk around and bump into people and say, are you in charge of anything? And then if you got an answer, nobody else in the room heard it. That's not an informational meeting. That's sneaky. So please stop that. Thank you. Just say no. That's what my heart says.
Thank you. The first is to consider approving a not-to-exceed amount of $38 million for the proposed community center. I will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion
forgetting
passes.
about
Thank you, Lindsay. Oh, I'm sorry, and Councilmember Kimling voted in dissent. The second recommended action is to consider approving a mail ballot election for the purpose of submitting to the qualified electors of the city the question of issuing general obligation bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of the proposed community center. I will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Motion passes. Councilmember Kimling voting in dissent. The third recommended action is to consider passing ordinance number 3251, authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in the amount of $500,000 to finance the initial operating cost. I will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Motion passes. Councilmembers Kimling and Jenkins voting in dissent. Final recommended action is to consider adopting resolution number 1858, calling for a special question election in the manner prescribed by the Mail Ballot Election Office Act. Okay, is this where we need to decide which version? Mr. Neighbor?
I was going to offer, I would move to support Resolution 1858 when it includes the revised ballot language that was stated tonight.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes with Councilmember Kimling in dissent. Item number 2 is to consider ordinance number 3252, approving the adjustment to the maximum assessments for West 53rd Street Extension Improvement District in connection with the construction of Fire Station 74. On March 26, 2018, the governing body passed ordinance number 3218, levying maximum assessments against the Fire Station number 74 property in connection with an improvement district. The fire station project is complete, and the final cost came in lower than originally estimated. An ordinance is required to adjust the final amount. The recommended action is to consider passing ordinance number 3252. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 3 is to consider adopting resolution number 1859, accepting the best bid for internal improvement bond, Series 2019A, approving ordinance number 3253, authorizing the issuance and delivery of internal improvement bonds, Series 2019A, and adopting resolution number 1860, prescribing the form and details for internal improvement bonds, Series 2019A. 2 resolutions and 1 ordinance are required to accept the best bid and authorize the sale and delivery of general obligation bonds, Series 2019A. The bonds are for Fire Station 74, 53rd Street improvements from Roberts to Woodsonia, Neiman North Stormwater Project, and Neiman Road improvements. 3 separate actions are required. There are 3 recommended actions tonight. The first recommended action is to consider adopting resolution number 1859. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. The second recommended action is consider passing ordinance number 3253. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. The final recommended action is consider adopting resolution number 1860. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is staff items. Item number 1 is to consider bids and award contract number 2019-023 with Phoenix Concrete LLC for the 2019 mill and overlay curb, sidewalk, and inlet repair program. 7 proposals were received on February 1st, 2019, and staff is recommending awarding the contract to Phoenix Concrete LLC in the amount of $6,136,500. Recommended actions: consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
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 Nay. Motion passes. Item number 2 is to consider contract number 2019-024, an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Merriam for the mill and overlay of Schweitzer Road between 47th and 55th Street and 69th and 75th Street. This project is part of the 2019 Mill and Overlay Program and is a joint project between Shawnee and the City of Merriam. Shawnee will administer the contract, and each city will be responsible for the cost of work within its jurisdiction. The recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 3 is to consider approving preliminary plans and authorizing the acquisition of easements for the Blackfish Parkway and Hauser Street Storm Drainage Improvements Project number 3467. On October 23, 2018, the governing body awarded a design contract to Olson Associates, Inc. It now requires preliminary plan approval and authorization to acquire easements. The cost estimate for construction is $1,100,000 and it is debt funded. There are 2 recommended actions tonight. The first recommended action is consider approving the preliminary plans, authorizing Olson to continue with the design of final plans. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Second recommended action is to consider authorizing staff to acquire easements on the project by initially requesting donations. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 4 is to consider approving preliminary plans authorizing the acquisition of easements for the Johnson Drive and Widmer Road Storm Drainage Project number 3460. On October 23, 2018, the governing body awarded a design contract to Olson Associates, Inc. It now requires the approval of preliminary plans and authorization to acquire easements. The cost estimate is $1,500,000 and is debt funded. There are 2 recommended actions tonight. The first recommended action is consider approving the preliminary plans, authorizing Olson to continue with the design of final plans. Is there any discussion from the council?
Additional SMAC funds available or what?
Did you have a question?
Just
Mr.
curious,
Jiggins.
just curiosity, like, were there no SMAC funds available for these type of projects, or we just?
Ernie Longoria, Senior Project Engineer, Storm Drainage. No, these were not available for SMAC funding.
Thank you.
Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
So moved. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Second recommended action is to consider authorizing staff to acquire easements on the project by offering fees as listed in the staff memo. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Was that an aye, Lindsay?
It was.
Thank you.
I tried to be a little quieter.
Item number 5 is to consider approving preliminary plans authorizing the acquisition of easements for the Quivira Drive and Park Street Storm Drainage Improvements Project Number 3466. On October 23, 2018, the governing body awarded a design contract to Renaissance Infrastructure Consulting. It now requires the approval of preliminary plans authorization to acquire easements. The cost estimate of $1,188,000 is debt funded. There are 2 recommended actions tonight. The first recommended action is to consider approving the preliminary plans and authorizing Renaissance Infrastructure Consulting to continue with the design of final plans. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Second recommended action is to consider authorizing staff to acquire easements on the project by offering fees as listed in the staff memo. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion has been made and seconded
Second?
on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 6 is to consider contract number 2019-025, a purchase agreement with Tyler Technologies for the Munis Financial Solution software. Staff and Client First refined and reissued a request for qualifications in September 2018 for a financial management system. 4 proposals were received, and staff is recommending awarding the contract to Tyler Technologies, Inc. in the amount of $444,091. Recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is miscellaneous items. Item number 1 is to ratify the semi-monthly claim for February 11th, 2019 in the amount of $1,644,104.89. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So motion to approve.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 2 is miscellaneous council items. Does anyone on the council have an item they would like to discuss? Mr. Neighbor.
Kudos to the snow removing crew. I don't think you're done yet.
Oh, boo.
Any other comments from you, Mr. Jenkins?
Yeah, I'd just like to say kudos to the council and to the audience tonight, all the people in attendance. We kept that pretty smooth tonight. Nobody got ugly, and thought that went very well, so appreciate everybody.
Ms. Meyer?
I would echo what Councilmember Jenkins said. I think it's been a long conversation for decades, it feels like, and it's been really cordial. So it's been good, a good exchange of information on both sides, and I think that's really healthy and a productive sign for the city. So.
Any other comments? Okay. Item number 3 is to conduct an executive session. I will accept a motion to recess to executive session for 20 minutes to receive attorney-to-client privilege communications in accordance with KSA 754319B2 for the purpose of protecting the confidentiality of those communications. At the conclusion of the executive session, the meeting will reconvene in the city council chambers. Do I have a motion?
Move to
20
recess to
minutes.
executive session.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, Constance, you got to meet us in the executive session.
See you there.
Oh, man. Where are we going? This way, this way.
Thank God for just a light.
Ready. So the next action is to conclude the executive session. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next action is to reconvene the meeting. Do I have a
Move
motion?
to reconvene.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. And do we have a motion, Mr. Neighbor, or Mr. Zimmerman?
Yeah, I have a motion to direct staff to proceed with the preparation of a resolution finding it necessary to acquire property for the city and authorizing a survey and description of the property to be acquired by condemnation, and the preparation of an ordinance to authorize and provide for the acquisition of such property.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. If there are no other items, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.
These are so cute. I want to keep them.